Hello and what's up everybody, welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, make sure to subscribe and become one of the bunnies, and if you're coming back, oh boy, we have a good video today, so make sure you grab your tinfoil hats, kick Otto out of the chat, and let's just hop into it. A couple of days on the Chinese server, the last act of chapter 24 came out, and with that, we can see that the doll is offering Kiana the Gem of Haste, basically the one for the Herrscher of Fire. I didn't take much into that, but it was really weird to me as I looked in Honkai 3rd guy's video, and especially the one on his future predictions, and he was able to have one of his subscribers translate it. In it, he explains something very interesting. Now, it says, Kiana, the Gem of Haste? The doll says, yes, say the answer, you know very well, Murata Himiko is dead. Now, I'm not going to take what the doll actually said seriously, but there's something very, very interesting that came up into my mind. Why the heck was a doll born on this earth that has no correlation of Sanfreya or anything like that, or Shiskel as a whole, be able to know Himiko's full name and that Himiko had the Herrscher of Haste gem? You can't tell me I'm the only one who was surprised by that. It's not possible. Then another translation, it says, finally the doll reveals the 1,000 is sacrificed themselves to create consolidated doll, just like what they tried to do to Voliona. The dolls are trying to awaken Serene again through her despair as a doll. They also say that the dolls are not the true Herrscher of Domination. Now, if you don't know where I'm going with this theory, oh, please strap on and listen up. With the whole thing going on, all of those dolls that we are seeing are not the real dolls. Like, they are not the real Herrscher of Domination. What we just saw is the girl that Kiana saved in Arc City, on another chapter. But nothing more than that. The actual Herrscher is still there. We know that those Herrschers all think and act the same. They are all weak together, they are all weak separately, but together they can make a lot of impact. More importantly, on one of the leaks, we are actually able to know and identify the last type in the game. It's the imaginary. For people who don't know what the imaginary is, oh, let me remind you. On chapter 17, Otto and Kevin actually meet up in a kind of similar bubble universe to what we see usually in the manga, but they talk about the imaginary tree. Otto actually explains that the imaginary tree is actually the reason why Honkai exists. On the imaginary tree, all the civilizations are there, and they are created. Basically, here's what he said exactly. The tree and the sea are alone in the universe. He's referring basically to the Sea of Quanta and the imaginary tree. They begin their never-ending rivalry. The sea swells while the tree expands its root. One seeks to flood, the other seeks to absorb. And during this seemingly endless time, that an unassuming branch grew a new bud. This was the birth of human civilization. But growth is countered by force, a selective and a corrective system in the tree's rivalry against the sea. A natural system based upon the imaginary mechanics. It breeds, nurtures, tests, and removes. And that's what humanity describes the Honkai. I know it's a lot to take in, but let me put it in another word. Basically, there's two things, the imaginary tree and the Sea of Quanta. They are against each other. But the tree needs to defeat the Sea of Quanta. And that Sea of Quanta is basically trying to flood the tree. For that, the tree decided that, okay, this human civilization that it came out of nowhere, but we need to make it strong enough to actually survive. So we have to put it through tests. And in other words, it breeds, that means that it breeds a human civilization. Nurtures, it gives the human civilization time to actually advance, to make better of themselves. Then it tests. That's why with more civilization, the higher the Honkai comes in. And then it removes. if the human civilization is not strong enough, it removes it, and that bud falls into the Sea of Quanta. So the Sea of Quanta is not actually the main resource for those bubble universes that we see. The main resource is actually the imaginary tree, and those bubble universes are rejected by the imaginary tree and the Honkai, the corrective system. So basically what we said and we came up with on the Discord chat was, as Syrian is able to say it, Honkai are God's test. Beat them and you win, you live. Or the tree's test, but close enough to a god, which makes sense. Finally, Otto says something that usually I hate Otto, but he says something very, very important. We must press forward because the tree must grow. Those who will fail become wilted shadows in the Sea of Quanta. In other words, if your civilization fail, then oh boy, the whole civilization is doomed for this bubble universe in particular. Now, another important part of the lore is actually one of the pioneers, the one responsible for Project Volca. His name is Sue. He was tasked with going through every single bubble universe and seeing how the civilizations were able to defeat Honkai. Apparently, when he met Durandal, he kind of came to the same and the final conclusion, but he wasn't able to continue his journey on as he was dying. So what he did is he gave all of his results to Durandal and asked her to give it to Otto. That's when Otto actually came up with this conclusion. And now Sue somewhere, he sank with his bubble universe and he's somewhere playing chess, Chinese chess with a god, which we don't really know a lot about. But that will be a theory for another day, honestly. Now, what does this have to do with Himiko itself and herself? Well, hear me out. We don't know the real face of the Herrscher of Domination. The Herrscher of Domination knows Himiko's name in particular, knows that the Gem of Haste belonged to her, and knows Kiana in particular and her relation to Serene. Which, that is extremely weird, considering the Herrscher of Domination doesn't really know a lot about the girls before. Or does it? We still don't know the Herrscher of Domination's real face, but we know one thing for sure. It has an imaginary power, and usually most Herrschers that we see are not aware and can't tap into the imaginary powers, at least not until now. So unless it had direct contact with the imaginary tree, it's not possible to actually have an imaginary power. With that, my theory comes in and my actual predictions. I believe that Himiko, when she fell after the Herrscher of Void's battle, she fell into the Sea of Quanta and was met by the imaginary tree. The imaginary tree was able to aid her and to help her survive. And when she went back to our world to continue the test, as she is a teacher, get it? But still, she was able to go back there, and she came back with as another Herrscher. She came back as the Herrscher of Domination, not as the Herrscher of Fire. Have you noticed something very, very weird in the chapters that we were doing and the stages? There's that very weird doll, big doll, like that huge freaky doll in the middle of the hallway, and the thing that the Herrscher of Domination built, whatever it is, that looks a lot like Sanfreya, I'm not gonna lie. Did you notice that it moves on its own, but at the same time, it has nothing to protect it, but at the same time, it's protected by everything? It's a very, very weird thing to put in a mechanic, and I do believe that it's kind of sus. So what I think actually is the actual Herrscher is in that doll. And the actual core of domination is in that doll in particular. The Gem of Haste will not serve any purpose for Himiko, as Himiko is not coming back as the Herrscher of Fire. Or at least not until now. And that's why we will be able to see that Serene and Kiana will make up together. And they will be using Himiko's broken Surtur in the upcoming chapters. and to defeat Himiko. Now I know it's kind of sad, but I think that Himiko is gonna come back to her senses, or she can die. But either way, that will probably be the end of the Herrscher of Domination, at least in the next chapter. And one more important thing. In one of my predictions before, I said that if you can't defeat Honkai, then why not seal it? Well, I do think what Otto is doing is something very interesting. He's basically trying to make every single Herrscher someone who is with humanity, not against humanity. By that, he will be able to defeat Honkai. Or in other words, not actually defeat it, but more like accept it and pass the test. But we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Until then, please tell me what you think in the comments down below. And let me know if you like those lore videos, because I have a lot to say and I can make more and more of them. I'll see you. Bye.